I thought camping in the woods behind my parents' house would be the safest place in the world, until a stranger's voice in the dark proved me terrifyingly wrong. I was 21 years old, broke from college, and too stubborn to admit to my parents that I didn't have the money or time to take a real summer trip. So instead of beaches or national parks, I dragged my old tent into the woods that stretched behind my parents' property. It was exactly wilderness. You could still hear the faint hum of cars from the nearby highway if the wind shifted right. But to me, it felt like an adventure. I set up my tent about 100 yards past the tree line, where the branches knitted together overhead, and the ground smelled like damp earth and pine needles. I wanted peace. Just me, a cheap sleeping bag, and the crackle of a little fire. For most of the night, that's exactly what I had. I cooked a can of beans over the flames, leaned back in a folding chair, and listened to cicadas singing so loudly it was like static in the air. I remember thinking, this is perfect. No interruptions, no roommates, no stress. But around midnight, the cicadas stopped. The woods got too quiet. If you've ever camped before, you know what I mean. When the normal buzz of nighttime creatures suddenly cuts off, your stomach sinks. It feels like the whole forest is holding its breath. That's when I heard it. A man's voice. Faint at first, just a low murmur threading between the trees. I froze. My first thought was that it had to be one of my neighbors. But no one lived close enough for their voice to carry out here. Not like that. The voice grew louder, clearer. It wasn't a shout. It was like he was having a conversation with someone. Except there was no response. Just one man, talking, words tumbling too soft and fast for me to catch. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe a hiker cutting through property. Maybe a farmer checking fences. But still, I doused my fire, packed at my chair, and quietly moved my tent deeper into the woods, closer to a cluster of thick pines. It felt safer there. Hidden. Eventually, exhaustion pulled me down. I zipped myself into the tent and let the rhythmic sound of leaves and the wind calm me enough to drift off. I don't know how much time passed before the sound woke me again, the crunch of footsteps circling the tent. I shot upright, hard in my throat. Then I heard it, that same male voice. This time close, very close. Nice night for a fire, isn't it? Every nerve in my body lit up. My tent's zipper rattled as I forced it open. And there he was, a man I had never seen before, crouched by the ashes of my fire pit. His clothes were dirty, like he'd been sleeping rough for days. His face was shadowed, but his grin caught the glow of the moonlight. "Do you mind if I sit for a while?" he asked, already lowering himself onto a log I dragged over earlier. I was too stunned to answer. My instinct screamed at me to run, but my body wouldn't move. He started talking, small talk at first, like we were neighbors catching up. Where was I from? Did I come out here often? What did I study at school? His voice was smooth, almost friendly, but his eyes never left me. They tracked me every time I shifted. Something about the way he stared made my skin crawl. I muttered excuses, saying I was tired and that I needed to sleep. He just chuckled, leaning closer to the dim glow of the fire pit. "You shouldn't camp out here all alone," he said. "Not safe. Not safe at all." Then, from the darkness behind him, another voice answered. A woman's, low, whispering. I hadn't seen anyone else, but the sound of twigs snapping confirmed it. He wasn't alone. My pulse slammed in my ears. Whoever this was, whatever they wanted, it was 2 against 1, and I had no weapons, no phone service, and no one who even knew where I was. I stood up slowly, pretending to stretch. My legs shook. "You know what? You're right," I said, forcing a laugh that sounded more like a squeak. "It's late, and I'm just going to head inside." His grin stretched wider. "Inside?" he repeated. "Yeah." I lied quickly. "My parents' house is just through the trees. They'll be wondering where I am." At that, his eyes flickered. He looked over his shoulder into the shadows where the second voice had come from. Something silent passed between them. That was my chance. I bolted. Branches whipped my face as I sprinted through the woods, heart hammering so loud I couldn't hear it if they were chasing me. I didn't care. I ran like my life depended on it, because it did. By the time the back porch light of my parents' house came into view, my lungs were on fire. I collapsed against the door, fumbling with the handle until I was finally inside, slamming the lock behind me. I stayed there, pressed to the wood, listening. Silence. No footsteps. No voices. When I finally dared to look out the window, the woods were still, peaceful, as if nothing had happened. But my tent, my sleeping bag, and my chair, all that was still out there, I never went back for them. To this day, I don't know who that man was. I don't know who the woman hiding in the shadows was. I don't know if they were squatters, drifters, or something far worse. All I know is this. Camping, even just in your own backyard woods, isn't always a safe escape you think it is. Sometimes, you're not as alone as you believe. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss a tale like this one. And tell me in the comments, have you ever had a creepy encounter while camping or hiking? I'd love to hear your experiences. Stay safe out there. And remember, sometimes the scariest things aren't in haunted houses or ghost stories. They're waiting just beyond the tree line,